solve it if you know that algorithm. It was very general. If you are having a good command on Python language or any other language, you can just go through the instructions given in the question and you can solve it. So it was more basic in that sense, but it was a long solution. We had to find the area of some intersecting lines of a graph or something like that. But if you have a good command on any one language, you can solve it. The CS fundamentals, it's been a while, but if you have a good idea of OS DBMS, I think you can figure that out. But once this round was done, we got a short list, and I think close to 10 to 15 people were shortlisted. And after this, we had interviews the next day itself. The interviews were eliminative. So if the first interview's performance was bad, they were not shortlisted for the next interview. So each person was having around three technical interviews and one HR round. And finally, there were about five people for HR round and four got the offer. And the interviews were primarily data structures and algorithms. They asked very popular questions. So if you have been consistently solving different types of DSA problems by following any good material or a teacher or any books, it's enough. And coming to the individual questions, in my interviews, I was asked a greedy algorithm based question. So the question was about find the minimum number of platforms required to ensure that all the trains can come and go. It's a very popular DSA question. So after that, another type of question I was asked was a one-dimensional dynamic programming question. It was something about the maximum wealth that a thief can, steal from the houses which are arranged in like one array. So that was a 1D DP question again. They were basic. One line, the DP solution was probably one line solution, and the greedy algorithm, I'm sure you might have done it in your college assignments also. So they were standard questions, but based on others' experiences, I remember that they were asked somewhat tougher questions also, but they were all very standard. So if you are following like an SD sheet or probably having a list of problems that you complete from start till the end, it you can crack it. I think it's open for questions. Anyone can ask. Does anyone want me to elaborate on anything that I have already said? Hello, Sindhu. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Did they ask you about any projects or something?
So most of the interviews were totally DSA based, but towards the start, they ask us to introduce ourselves. So the students can take the opportunity to tell a little bit about their projects and internships in that part. And towards the HR round, I sort of understood that they were asking more general questions. That's when I Googled up the company myself and I read a little about what they do. And that's when I first came to know that they do integrated platform as a service, which is their product. So during my HR round, they asked me, why do you want to join Celigo? It's a very generic question, but they expect you to research about the company a little bit, know what they do and what will excite you when you join. So because I knew that they worked on that product, I could tell them that I'm excited to work in like a mid-range company that gives me a lot of startup-like exposure to different technologies, and also I want to work on their integrated platform as a service, which is very intriguing and unique according to me. So I answered it in that way. So reading up about a company is always beneficial, especially in like the final interviews. And it was purely DSA for the first three rounds. And what I would say is they were not expecting you to like type out the solution. They just wanted to discuss it with us and type the solution on a Google Doc. So the code doesn't have to be extremely syntactically correct, but if you get the logic right and you can type it out in a paper, then you can have a chance of going to the next round. So you can skip on the details like semicolons and small minor things, but if you can write a structured code in the language of your choice, that's enough.
Yeah. Also, do you have any tips for how to clear the coding round, first coding round?
So for the first coding round, I would say focus first on getting your coding question done, and that's not just for Celigo, whichever company you're going for. Get sort out the coding question. Set aside time based on, like, if the total time is 1 hour, tell yourself tell yourself properly that for first 30 minutes I'm going to perfectly solve the coding question, and if it takes more time than that, or if the test cases aren't passing, you stop the coding question first, finish off the fundamentals, usually they are MCQs, and then if you have time, come back. Because sometimes it happens that people are too stuck up on trying to get all the test cases passing that they don't sit and do the MCQs. And for some companies, the weightage they give to the coding question and MCQs is almost same. So you may think that coding question is like a lot more important than fundamentals, but sometimes the scoring is such that the difference is not that big and you may miss out on the company. So first, coding question is a priority. Set aside a good chunk of time, but also go there and come back if necessary, and save your questions, save your solutions whenever possible. And preparation wise, I would say DSA is not something you can master in a day, and it obviously needs more time and effort. But one thing you can do is try to put all of your practiced problems in a GitHub repository, or maintain a document where you can put the link to the solution. So when you're revising in the last minute, like let's say tomorrow is your first round, you should be able to efficiently revise everything that you have already solved. So I think that practice is important, but what you do one day before the interview rounds and coding rounds is also important. So keep a good set of questions. You can't just do all the questions right one day before. You have some time, try to have all of your solutions in one place which you can just skim through them, and you will have a better understanding of different models, and it will boost your confidence. Guys, if you have any questions, feel free to ask via chat or unmute, because it's a very good opportunity. Even though I didn't end up joining the company, I have friends who have joined the company, and they are getting very good exposure and good salary also. So CTC is 16 LPA, and it may change for your batch, but the internship 6 month internship stipend is 30,000 per month. Once you join full time, 16 LPA, the breakdown will be shared with you. So you may get roughly around 70 to 80K per month once you join full time. It can be slightly lesser than that. Yes, there was one coding question, but the only thing is it was very long. So it was not a very small question, but it was not hard either. So as I mentioned, it had lots of instructions. Like the question itself had, okay, this is these are intersecting lines, these points are the intersecting points, and they explained it very deeply. And there were lots of edge cases which they again explained in the. So if you're not careful, you can skip a lot of test cases. A lot of my friends, it happened like that. They missed a few test cases because they didn't read the question properly. I would rate it a medium level question, but it was not based on any special algorithm. Okay, Abhiram, are you asking for like the interview rounds? Okay, if that's for the interview rounds, I remember only these two questions perfectly, which I mentioned, the greedy algorithm and the 1DDP. But in one of my interviews, which had the greedy algorithm, I think they gave a variation. So, first they asked the one which I told, the minimum number of platforms required. After solving it, they slightly modified the question and asked again. So I had to change my code in order to do it. So I think you can expect two problems if you are quick to solve. So in my dynamic programming question, the first question was to solve the question, which is find the maximum amount the thief can steal. After I solved it, they spent the remaining time of the interview, asked me to write test cases where the program can fail. So I told them that a normal person may think like this, so I will write this test case so that it will fail if they don't follow the dynamic programming approach. So you have to think where any person who is writing this code will fail. So think in that context and write some test cases. So for me, it was one question in each interview round because they extended the question afterwards. Okay, so Satvik, can we expect CS fundamental questions in technical interviews or is it just yes? I see. I am one person who experienced the interviews. So for me, there were no CS fundamental questions in the interviews because I think that's their plan of giving them in the first round itself. So they focus entirely on DSA. But I think if a person does not solve the question, they may ask CS fundamentals to see if they can send them to the next round or not. So it depends on your DSA ability, maybe. But for me, it was just DSA. Does anyone have any more questions, guys? Feel free to ask whatever it is. It's one of the good companies that comes to college, which has a 10 lakhs plus package. So, okay, Amaya, the thing is that CS, because we give so many interviews, I don't remember exactly what MCQs were asked. But as far as I remember, they were very straightforward. Oops may have been included, but sorry, I can't elaborate much. Okay, Abhiram, so that's a good question because based on all the companies that I have noticed, Celigo seemed to be very sort of merit based company. So the shortlist looked like the list of people who were able to solve the coding question maximum, like who missed only like a few test cases and also were able to give enough time to MCQs. So based on what my friends and I observed in our class and everything, we noticed that it was mostly people who got their coding question almost completed and they also did MCQs properly. But one thing I don't know if it's good to say it out open, but there was a pattern that they were slightly prioritizing girls. But I'm not saying that you will not get selected or something. Guys who are trying, it's just that they it seemed like they were trying to do 50% girls and 50% boys, something like that. And it could be slightly. I think girls were 60%, boys were 40%. So the shortlist depends on multiple factors. But the ones who did the coding question, all the test cases, but they didn't do the MCQs. Some of them didn't get shortlisted. So prioritize both of them.
If any of you don't have any questions, I guess we can wrap this session.
1 minute, I think I have
Yeah.
a message. GPA. Okay, so I personally don't remember GPA being a very big criteria. Everyone, almost everyone who applied got to write the first round. After the first round, we didn't notice any pattern of GPA based filtering. But one thing I will say, because I was also a student, it is that um, three out of the four, all the four people who got shortlisted in the end happened to have a 9 plus CGPA. But I don't think that the top 10, 15 which they picked out of the whole bunch of people who wrote the first round, that first shortlist was not based on CGPA. But the four people, I'm sure you already got the list of the people who got selected, and all of our CGs were 9 plus. That was just a pattern, maybe. So, guys, try not to use the personal DM because it's hard for me to check the messages in this. But okay, I'm going one by one. Are they checking for projects we did and the resume? So, yes, the projects do matter when you first initially introduce yourself in the interviews. They don't specifically open your resume and check it in front of you, but in the interviews it will be beneficial if you talk about your projects. And the overall resume, I personally didn't notice them checking like that. Let me go through other messages. How much time will be given for a coding question? So I think the total time was around 1.5 hour, including MCQs and coding question. But the coding question itself didn't have a separate timer, so you have to manage your time yourself. So the eligibility of sitting for a next company or not, um, I personally won't say that you have to reject the first offer in order to go for the second, sitting for the second company. um, till you get your offer letter, you can still keep applying. And based on our college policy, as far as I remember, it was something that your base salary of the next company you apply for should be 25% higher than the previous company which you got selected for. I would personally say don't think too much about the placement policy when you're applying for companies, because first, getting a job is important. And in my case, after I got selected for Celigo, I wasn't allowed to sit for Oracle. But I don't personally regret that decision at all, because I mean, I didn't join both the companies. I joined Goldman Sachs, which was off campus. So you still have the opportunity to sit for off campus placements also, and even on campus. If you have a valid reason to apply, you can talk to your placement coordinators. So I will say don't think too much about the policy. First, get a company. If the package is satisfactory, you can always focus on the other companies or convincing the placement cell. All of those things come later, but don't think about it now. So out of the four people who got selected, four of them were girls only. I think you already have that detail sent to you. But yeah, it was four girls who got selected. If I missed anyone's message, please send it to me again. I'm trying to see all of them. SQL. Um, Vaishnavi, the thing is, I don't remember the exact topics that were covered in the test. If I get any more information, I'll pass it on to Sindhu and the placement group so they can share it with all of you. But for now, I don't remember individual topics that went into the MCQ round. But again, the MCQs were pretty straightforward. It was not something too hard. If you finish your coding question in like almost 70% of the time, you can spend the remaining 30% and easily finish all of them. Okay, so Krishna is asking us about some good projects that we can work on. So I would suggest that whatever projects you do, try to be ready to answer any kind of questions that a person can ask. So I personally had three projects on my resume. First one was ML, face recognition, and image processing kind of project. The other one was a full stack project, which I did in the JP Morgan Code for Good. And the third one was a Flutter based website, which was like a whiteboard canvas where people can draw. Now, whenever I encounter interviews, they try to find the weak points of the project and they try to test your knowledge on the weak points. So, my project, which was image processing and face recognition, in that it was an attendance system. So, the attendance of the students, we were simply putting it into a SQLite database, and we would generate an SQLite database, and we would generate an accessing SQLite in their system. It is a small and relatively free kind of DB. So they might have felt that my knowledge of DBMS is not good enough. So in some interviews, they would after I told them about my project, they would after I told them about my project, they would ask me more DBMS questions because I was not using a good DB. So if your project has any weak points, it could be that the UI is bad, or the DBMS, which the models which you created in DBMS, they are not optimized. So they will try to ask questions on your weak points. But projects are one such area where you can hide some details if you're not comfortable talking about it. So if there's an algorithm which you don't know, you can simply not talk about it in the explanation. So you have to cleverly handle your project related questions. Okay. Krishna, you can we can surely connect. If you can get my details from the placement cell, sure. We can connect about Goldman Sachs internship as well. Guys, any more questions? As far as I can see, I have answered all of them. Sindhu, do you have any questions that you personally got or something? I can see one more question now. I'll take that.
Okay, I didn't get anything.
Okay, so they are asking about questions on OS and computer networks. Um, as I mentioned again, that there were no questions like that in the interviews. They were purely DSA. But in the coding round, whatever were asked, it was a mix of different topics, but I'm not sure exactly which topics they were, because it's been a long time. But being prepared with different areas is good. One minute. Okay, so Sindhu is asking about the DSA concepts which we should be focusing on. So, see, one thing is, I'm not sure how many of you follow YouTube influencers in the DSA space, like Striver, who is a Google employee. You have Mohammad Fraz. You have uh, a lot of other people who try to help students improve their DSA skills. So a lot of them release sheets. They are called DSA sheets, and they cover different questions from each topic. So from my end, what I did was, by the time Celigo came to our campus, I didn't join any institute for learning DSA. It was all through YouTube videos and completing sheets like the DSA sheet by Striver. It is a very good sheet, guys. It's a 30-day schedule. Each day, if you solve some number of questions in 30 days, you can finish all the DSA topics you need for an interview. And both the questions which I got in my Celigo interviews were covered in that DSA sheet, because it's a list of very popular questions which a lot of companies ask. I'll try to type it in the chat box before leaving, but try to check out some sheets like that so that you can cover all the topics broadly. One mistake most students do is they stick to one topic which is hard. They try to keep solving more and more questions in that one topic, and they don't have the time to do the others. So if there's a tough topic like recursion or backtracking or any topic which is hard for you, leave that topic. Just see the most important questions, leave that topic, cover other topics like trees, heaps, graphs, a little bit of basics of graphs, lots of array models like you have prefix sum, you have sliding window, you have lots of subtopics even in arrays, right? So cover every single topic and greedy algorithms, different types of algorithms. So if you can touch at least each topic, you're more likely to at least give it a try. Don't stick to one topic. And in, as I was mentioning, this particular company, they asked a lot of trees, grid arrays and dynamic programming. Question can come from anywhere, but if you can at least give each type of topic, each type of question a try before the interviews, you can get into a conversation with the interviewer. They don't expect you to know every solution, they want to see how you try. So if you should be able to try a question, you should at least know the basic concept. If you don't know how to traverse a tree, you can't solve any question on trees. So don't put yourself in a position where you don't know the basics and that's why you're not able to solve the question. If it's a hard question also, based on how you try, you have a much better chance of getting into the next round. And let me tell you, both of the questions which I solved, the first one, which was a greedy algorithm based question, it took me almost half an hour to give them the most correct solution. So it's not like people are experts. It's just that if you can sit down without being scared, you can tell them that this is what I'm thinking, this is how I'm planning to solve. They will give you some hints, and based on that hint, you can try. But you can only understand those hints if you have at least done that model at least once. So don't skip on different models of questions and focus on one topic. For any company, that's true. I'll take the next question. Okay, so someone asked about how to explain a project to an interviewer. So if it's a project that you have collaborated with your college teammates or some other competition hackathon, it's better if you just stick to first telling the whole broad view of the project and then tell them about the individual contribution that you did. So how most people tell the best way to explain a project is to use something called the star method. So you can Google it yourself, but STAR method basically stands for something like strengths, weaknesses, strengths, targets, and something like that. I will try to give a better illustration. But the STAR method tells you that first you have to tell them the problem which you were trying to solve with your project. Then you can tell the your own contribution. Then you can tell how your project solves the problem, and finally the results which you get from that problem. So try to maintain a strict uh, pattern in your head so that you cover all the points that you have to cover. Sometimes we get overexcited or we are so nervous that we just keep speaking a lot, but we are not giving them the most important details. So everyone Google about the star method of explaining projects, and you can keep that in mind. So you can first say situation, what's the whole project situation. Then the T stands for the task, which is what you did in that situation. Then A stands for action which you took, which is how you solved the problem. And finally, the results which you got. Try to maintain such a pattern so your thoughts are clear. And frankly, I will say, when you're explaining projects, you may think that my English is weak or I'm not very good at communication. But if you just practice it for 1 minute before you go for the interview, you will be very much confident. So if that is a weak part for you, if communication is a weak skill, practice it one before you go there and keep such techniques in mind. Keep the star acronym in mind and try to cover each letter through your explanation. Then we have how well should we behave in an interview. So, guys, this is one tip which I saw myself some in YouTuber told, but I like to tell that in talks like this. So, in interviews, the interviewers are looking for potential co-workers. So if you clear the interview, you will become an employee of the company and you will work with them. So don't treat your interviewer like he's your manager or boss or some very great person and you are not as an equal. So when you start treating them like, oh sir, I'm so sorry, or something like that, it creates that sort of hierarchy which they don't want. Try to treat your interviewer as an equal. Address by their first name, don't call them sir, ma'am, or anything. If their name is anything, see their name in the meeting and you can address them by their own name. And be very confident when they ask for an introduction. Give a maximum 1.5 minute introduction. Don't drag the whole intro. And then, when in the end of the interview, when they say, do you have any questions, always ask a question. It shows that you're interested in the company, which is very important. They are looking for someone who wants to join the company and become their co-worker. So you have to showcase that confidence, professional behavior, and also an enthusiasm towards the company. So if you don't have any questions, you can simply ask, what does it feel like to work in that company? So I asked the question myself. I asked them, what is it like to work in Celigo? Because the interviewer, he told me in the beginning that he worked in a big MNC, then he came to Celigo. So I was curious, why did he leave a big MNC and come to Celigo? And he told me his good experience in the company. So they will start feeling that you are also interested. So your questions should showcase that you're genuinely interested in the company. And the overall behavior, confidence is very important. Attempt every question. And if you're unable to answer a question, let us say they asked you something like, what is a NoSQL database? Or they asked you a DSA question, which you don't know the answer to. You can simply tell that, I am not sure, but I will learn about it. Professionally tell that, I'm not sure now, but I will learn about it. This will give them an impression that you are not neglecting it, you are going to go home and read about it. So you're a constant learner, which is a very big skill that they look for in potential employees. So there are a few tricks here and there. I will not take up too much time to give such tricks. You can watch videos and it will help you a lot. I'm taking the next question. Okay, so in DP, the question is memoization versus tabulation, space optimization of DP problems. So I personally mostly do tabulation method only in the end, and because my question was just a one-liner, I thought that, and personally, I will honestly tell you, recursion is my weak spot. So I try to avoid writing a recursive solution, and I mostly try to stick to iterative solutions for anything. So, but if you think that you can do it in a memoization way and they may ask you to tabulate it later, you can do it as much as you can. And if the time is up or something like that, you can simply say that, I will look into it further and try to optimize the solution, learn how to optimize the solution. So always be in that sort of learning mindset, showcase your learning mindset and showcase your enthusiasm. But for any question, do it as much as you can, optimize it as much as you can. But if you're unable to go any further, just outright don't tell them that I don't know. Say that I will learn. So end it on a more positive note. But I personally did a tabulated solution. Okay, I have few more questions. Let me see. Two projects and one internship. So, see, it depends on what you already have. If you have two good projects and one good internship, keep it. Putting anything on your resume is like creating more scope for asking questions. So don't compromise on your comfort zone for just for putting more projects if you're not comfortable talking about them. Always stick to your comfort zone. If you want to have two projects, one internship, good to go. That's very good for a fourth year student. Don't worry about that. Then we have one more, I think. Okay, so the questions are getting more and more general, which is fine. But the question says that, can they can ask for other approach while we are coding, even if you have the best approach. So the thing is, if you know what you have is the best approach, try to not outright tell it that I think my solution is best, I don't want to do the other approach. So sometimes interviewers ask other approaches just to see if you have the knowledge of that other approach. So let us say if they gave you a tree question and you all first itself you did the optimized approach, they may think that you're probably already familiar with the question. That's why you were able to do the best approach first itself. So don't put yourself in that situation. Always try to do one brute force solution, and they will say now you optimize it. Then only you should optimize. If you already know the best approach and they still ask you to implement, simply start implementing whatever the interviewer asks. You have to simply do it. Don't back question saying that I already have the best solution. And you can further, after doing the approach he or she asked, you can give the time complexities of both the solutions and tell them that um, the first solution which I wrote seems to be the better solution based on time and space complexity. But don't refuse if they ask you to do anything. I have one more question. I just can't see it for some reason. 1 minute. Okay, so Abhiram asks about Python versus other languages. I personally code in Python, and the biggest reason for that is CSC department first introduces Python to CSC students. So one thing is when you're in online interviews, and these days most of the online interviews are on a Google Doc, or it is a some sort of plain page on which you have to type the solution or write the solution. So Python, I personally prefer it because there is not much of syntax involved. I don't have to write a class, or I don't have to declare the data types of variables just to use them. So I prefer Python for that reason because firstly I'm used to the language. Secondly, it is easier to type when you're in a non-editor environment, which is you're not using VS Code or any other environment, and you're on a Google Doc. So there are no automatic suggestions or anything. So you have to type every single word. In other languages, it can be slightly hard to type every single thing without making mistakes. But other thing is that whenever a person is using Java or C++, the interviewer itself, they first itself they tell that you don't have to type long int or something. Like they will say use LLI as a shortcut. So no matter which language you use for interviews, it doesn't matter. uh, I have only seen one company or two companies so far which come to campus which are specific about languages. One was MathWorks. They are a C++ based company. So they want C++ based candidates. So they personally don't prefer Python. And I think there was one more company, I don't remember the name, but except one or two, no other company so far has any problem with Python. And if you are good at Python and you use Python, no reason why you should change. And that's a tip for everyone actually, that if you are not comfortable with a language, don't just use it because it's like C plus, everyone uses C plus plus, so even I should use. Stick to what you're comfortable with, because if you're not comfortable, it affects your confidence and you may make more mistakes. You won't know the built-in functions, so your overall efficiency is reduced. Again, difficulties for using Python? No, actually, initially when I tried to go for interviews, I shifted to C++ plus plus in the very beginning, like in my second, third year when I was applying for internships, and that's when I faced the problem that I was not comfortable with C++ plus plus syntax. I didn't know how to use built-in functions, so I ended up wasting my time in interviews trying to figure out minor details. So I went back to Python, and I have been much more efficient and comfortable in cracking interviews. Honestly, within companies, the most used languages are JavaScript and Java. And again, depending on your role, you may be working more with SQL based languages also. So they don't normally care about what you're using outside for data structures and algorithms, because if you're good at DSA, they assume that you can learn any language. So the big top 5 6 companies, they don't care about the language. um, I think that's all. I don't see any more questions. Guys, let's not extend the whole thing. If you have any more questions, immediately send them, or else we can wrap up. I think that's all. I've mentioned some of the resources which I verbally specified in the chat box for reference.
Yeah. Thank you guys for joining, and thank you so much, Pranati, for taking out of your schedule to join us. We truly learned so much from you. Yeah.
Thank you, Sindhu. And bye, everyone. Have a nice day. Oh, wait, I have one last, I have a message. Okay, nothing much. So, thank you, everyone. It was nice interacting with you guys as well. Bye.